So the question is, how do you mix the roles between entrepreneurism and science? You just stir it up. I don't know. It was never with a big plan other than a pretty clear vision of what it is that we really wanted to accomplish. What happens over time is an organizational reluctance to take risks. Right? And that is, it turns out, as the company grows, something that you really have to manage. Because what happens is, because of budgets and because of revenues and so on, there tends to be much more focus on, okay, can we afford to do this or can we afford to do that? And that is not a good climate for basic research and science. Basic research and science, I think you want to know what your budget is, and then you will work with it, or you can try to add to it. And so, personally, so that all the science and the innovation does not become just a victim of quarter-to-quarter revenues and growth of the company. A couple of years ago, what we did is we set up this thing called AFI Labs. And there we set it up as a totally separate sort of scientific organization. And every year, we actually fund it to a certain level. Okay, guaranteed funding, year after year. Okay? And what happens is then that the scientists within the AFI Labs know what their budget is. And if they want to go beyond that budget, we really encourage people to write grants. It keeps them competitive. And we've actually grown the science and the technology budget substantially. And that actually turns out to be a really good innovation engine to keep the whole thing going. And so over time, for me personally, that's sort of been my job, is that we build a very strong core technology, science and technology engine, and then we're feeding these other businesses. Now, I should mention, the two big product lines in life sciences today are really to look at this RNA expression area, and then the big growing another area that's coming up fast is this whole screening of human polymorphisms across the populations. That's actually a very rapidly growing part of our business. At the same time, there are lots of other opportunities. For example, in diagnostics, what we decided to do in diagnostics was, instead of going sort of vertical with Salesforce and all these people in diagnostics, we took what we called, it's like an Intel Inside model, where we go to the big diagnostic companies of the world, and we actually sell them the chips to go into their tests, and they go out and market them, just like a sort of an Intel model. We call it powered by AFI because you can't call it AFI Inside, right? But it's that sort of model. And over time, some of these new areas, for example, in an infectious disease monitoring, we're just completing a pretty large clinical study where actually we're doing monitoring what are the infectious organisms that a person harbors. And so we're doing about 10,000 people in this big clinical study to monitor what is the bacterial flora that each person harbors. And so you can actually start to do population dynamics of the bacteria that each person carries. And then how is that moving through the population? And at the same time, you can start to look at white blood cell changes and so on to tell whether or not there's any pre-symptomatic indications of sickness. So again, environmental monitoring, infectious disease, these diagnostic markets, as well as us going vertically in the sort of life sciences with DNA products and RNA products, you have to build a really strong technology engine and then keep that somewhat separate, although connected, in terms of what are the market opportunities that you can go after. And that's kind of how we juggle that right now, and that's how I do it personally.